Hello, friends and fellow bakers. How are you doing? It's Chef Instructor Tom from chefinstructortom.com. How you doing? Tom Beckman at your service. Glad you joined us today. Today we're going to be making some baked goods, but I first wanted to talk about our little visit to the Publican Bakery that I visited last week. I hope you enjoyed our little visit, and I hope you realize what my favorite item to make is. Yeah, it's croissants. And croissants are one of those things that I'm going to make on this channel eventually, but it does take a little bit of practice, a little bit of patience, and not that you can't handle it. I know that you can, but I'm just trying to figure out a way I can do it on video. So I hope you can join us for that one soon. In the near future, though, we'll be doing some more episodes on quick tips. We're going to be doing some little baked goods, little muffins and things like that. And I think you're going to enjoy the rest of the summer with this channel. So stay with me. I do appreciate you subscribing and liking and enjoying the channel. Hey, let's make some really cool baked goods. All right. Hey. So today we're going to be making some English muffins. And English muffins, I've seen a lot of videos online on YouTube, different bakers making English muffins in different ways. And they're good, but I just got to say, I like my way the best. I think you're going to find this is pretty easy to do. It's pretty methodical, and it's not really beyond the beginning baker. You can do it. I have very good confidence in you. I would say it is I'm not boasting about that. I'm just saying I like my way the best. I have a pretty high hydration dough, so get ready to develop that gluten. That means, hint, don't add any extra flour. So let's get to mixing this dough. So here's our mise en place, and we have our flour. This is bread flour, instant yeast, a little granulated white sugar, 1 egg, a little bit of kosher salt, milk, of course, and maybe not, of course, maybe you don't know that, and then some butter. And you'll notice I kind of cut up the butter a little bit to soften it. So when I mix it, it blends into the dough better. And even if it doesn't blend in right away, not a big deal. It'll get its work in during the stretch and folds. Not a big deal at all. When you do mix this dough, we're just going to mix it and just till it comes together. And you've probably seen me do this kind of mixing before, where I mix it and let it rest for a while. So let's get to mixing the dough. So let's mix this dough. This is going to be about 84% hydration when we get finished with the egg and the milk in there. We're going to put the sugar, the instant yeast, the salt, and we'll leave the butter until we're just about finished. We're going to combine the dries there a little bit. And then the milk goes in. And like I said, this dough is going to be pretty liquid. And that's okay, because we're going to develop gluten over time. We're going to do the old stretch and fold technique, of course. And once we get that pretty well incorporated and started there, then we can start adding our butter to it. And the butter I had is a little softened, as you can see. And I'm going to put it in little pieces here and there around the dough. And that way it'll get mixed in. And like I said before, if you don't get it all mixed in at the beginning, that's totally cool too. And I just use a spatula like this. That's all I ever use. I was watching another channel where he uses a spoon all the time. And everybody's got their favorites. Make sure it all gets wetted up. And like I said, see the butter? Didn't get completely incorporated. Not a big deal. And right now you're going, oh my God, how is this ever going to be dough? Well, trust me, it will. All we're going to do is we're going to make sure it's all wetted up here. Get up underneath it. She looks good there. And it looks like batter now. Well, because it kind of is. And that's pretty typical for English muffins. I think if you make them too stiff, they're not so good. You want those nooks and crannies, right? And leave it for an hour. Okay, so now it's rested for an hour, and you've seen me do this numerous times with different bread doughs. Doesn't look like much right now, but what we're going to do is it's after resting for an hour, it's pretty well hydrated. So what's going to happen is we're going to take this out of the bowl, We're going to stretch it, and it's going to look pretty funky. But over the next hour or so, we're going to stretch it 3 times. And in those 3 times, we're going to develop a lot of gluten, get a lot of strength in that dough. And right now, it doesn't look like much, but it'll get there. Of course, we're going to start with wet hands, as we always do. We're going to pull it out of the bowl. And you'll notice, don't put any flour down. You don't need to put any water or any flour down for this. Wet hands, that's the key to it. Stretch it out. And you can start to see it kind of falls apart, but then bring it together. Start to stretch it. And it might not look like it's stretchable, but it definitely is. And you can even see it starting to get a little bit stronger, even in the few seconds we're doing this. Now, this is where you can work your butter in a little bit more too, if the butter hasn't been worked in. Use your scraper, like so. Let's do another one. So we stretch, and already, can you see it's getting stronger? Fold it in thirds, and fold it in third again. Okay. And yeah, it's going to look kind of funky for a little bit. That's okay. It goes back in the bowl. Make sure you get the bench all cleaned up. Save all the good dough. Then we're going to come back in 20 minutes and stretch it again. We'll do that over the next hour. So we'll do a total of 3 stretch it folds. That's the first one. There's 2 more. And then we're all done. And then it's going to ferment overnight. So let's do our second of 3 stretch it folds. And as you can see, it's risen a little bit. We also have a lot more gluten development over the past, say, 20 minutes or so from when we started. You're going to use your bench scraper. Again, use wet hands. Get that dough out of there. And you can wet your bench scraper too if you want. It all helps. And think about where we came from that dough. You can really stretch that out now. Fold it in thirds. Scrape up an extra dough there. Stretch it out again and fold it in thirds again. And think about 84% hydration in this dough. This is such a wet dough, but that's what's going to give you those great nooks and crannies. You'll see in the next segment. Finish it up here. Put it back in the bowl. Towel goes back on, and we rest for another 20 minutes. So we're ready for our final stretch and fold, and it's been 20 minutes since our last stretch and fold. I want to put it in this container to store it overnight, and we're going to store it in the refrigerator for longer fermentation. Lower temperature slows down the fermentation. Since it's been at room temperature, it's probably going to want to puff up in your container, so make it a container big enough that can accommodate your rise. But also, you might need to punch it down while it's in the refrigerator. Check on it in 5 or 6 hours, and I'll bet it's poofed up a bit. You can punch it down and then leave it all night long. Then you're all ready for tomorrow. Let's do one more stretch and fold. And I know this looks so wet even now. As we fold this up one last time, you'll see that it's quite strong, but still kind of sticky. And you're saying, how am I going to cut English muffins out of this? Well, here's the good news. Because there's a little bit of fat in there, and because it will tighten up overnight, you'll be able to cut it very easily when we go to stretch it out. You'll see what I mean in our next segment. Lay it in the container. Top goes on. Nice and sealed tight. There we go. And now we're all ready for tomorrow. This will sit in the refrigerator for 12 to 24 hours. If you go a little bit longer, I'm okay with that though too. Longer time will give you that lactobacilli bacteria that we've been looking for. That's going to give us a really nice depth of flavor. See you in 24 hours. So, are you well rested? I hope you are. Your dough is, and of course, you don't want to get it out until you're ready to work with it. Of course, we're ready to work with it now. You're going to get all your materials together first before you get it out. You're going to have your half sheet pan with dusted with flour, of course, right there. And that could be AP or bread. Either one's good. Some extra flour there. Your cutter for your English muffin, and you definitely want to use a cutter. I've seen a lot of people roll them, and I just think they look better when they use a cutter. You also need some bench scrapers because the bench scrapers are going to be helpful for getting the dough up off the bench when it's time. Well, let's pour our dough out onto our dusted. We'll put a little dusting down there. Now, normally, you know me, I'm not big on putting extra flour there. I want to make sure that we don't add any extra flour to this, but this dough is pretty wet. So we're going to be very gentle as we take it out of the container there, out of its overnight hibernation. And we're just going to kind of stretch it out and try to give it even as possible. And you can use a rolling pin if you want, but I find that just by flattening it, and you can use a rolling pin maybe at the end, it might be a little easier to work with. But if we're going to just stretch this out, get it to about maybe ½ inch thick. Well, of course, now I say, I really want the rolling pin now. Just to get it evened out. Take your time with this. Get it shaped just the way you want it. A little extra flour on there. And you can always turn it over too. Because I'm noticing that I have thick spots and thin spots here too. That looks pretty good. And we're going to put a little bit of flour on our cutter. Press straight down. And you can twist. They always say, you know, with biscuits you don't twist. But for us, it doesn't really matter. We're not trying to keep layers together. We're just trying to make a lovely English muffin. And I keep putting in the flour because that way it doesn't stick quite as much when I put it through the English muffin itself. And you're saying to yourself, what, I only get 6 to start? Yeah, well, that's true. And I'm just going to pull this right off. Don't discard that. That's still good stuff. And so you don't distort these guys at all. Kind of get a little flour underneath there. And get them on the pan, like so. And that one did get a little distorted. You see that's how it's kind of oval shaped? That was probably stretched a little too funky in the beginning. Hey, we learn. It'll still be tasty, no matter what, even if they are distorted. Now, with this extra dough, you're saying to yourself, oh my goodness, what is going on here? Well, I don't really want you to re-roll it per se. It's just kind of bring it together, kind of flatten it out again. Now they won't be as pretty as the first batch, but they still definitely work. And most of your customers, namely your kids maybe, won't know the difference anyway. They'll just go, oh, nooks and crannies, yay. Let's cut. And maybe we can get a second one out of that. And then I think we probably get one more out of this. Let's re-roll, or reform, I should say. We should all reform, shouldn't we? Reform. Flatten. Cut it out. Cut it out, okay. And that goes on your pan as well. And then this little bit of scrap, I don't know what we call that guy, but really won't need to cut it. We'll just kind of round it like that. So we'll just have kind of some really nice ones, some okay ones, and then some ones that are not perfect. Still nice. And we'll just let those guys sit. Just let those guys be for about an hour, hour and a half or so. You can put a towel on top to cover it and let it proof for about an hour and a half. So check these guys out. They have rested for an hour and a half and they have now proofed really well. And you're going to want to get up underneath them. Maybe put a little bit extra flour around it, right where it's going to be, where it's going to come up. Be a little bit of flour on top. And just push that flour underneath and you'll be able to lift that up without any trouble. This will go on your cast iron pan or your flat top or even just any other, heavy bottom pan. And we can use those. And remember, we're not going to bake these. We are cooking them on the stove top. You can always finish them in the oven if you want, but we're going to go to the stove now and use my new cast iron pan. Okay, so now I have my cast iron pan preheating here. Kind of medium to low, actually. You want a relatively low heat for this. We're just going to put a little bit of fat down in there. I mean, just a tiny bit, maybe like a teaspoon or so. Give it a little run around. And this will give you an idea of how hot the pan is. Right now, it's kind of, I would say, medium hot. And we're just going to lay those guys in. And we're kind of, I don't want to say baking, but it's we're cooking in the pan. Let me pick up this guy here that I had before. We're going to put this guy down right on there. And we'll scrape a cup more over here. And again, use that flour. A little bit of flour in the pan is not going to be the end of the world. But use the flour to help pick up the English muffins. And I'll do 4. This is a 12-inch cast iron pan. Like I said, medium heat. I have it on 4 right now. Your heat may vary a little bit. But not much is going to happen right now. We're going to let this guy cook a little bit, and we'll see how it does in just a few minutes. It might take about 5-6 minutes before anything happens. It's going to rise up a little bit. And when you get brown on one side, you're going to turn it over to the other side and brown the other side. During that time, that's exactly when the cooking takes place. You can preheat the oven. I've had pretty good luck with these, so I'm not going to preheat the oven. These guys will be done when they're done. So it's been about 3 minutes so far. Let's take a look at what it looks like underneath. We can flip one over and see how she looks. Just a tiny little bit of browning, not much at all. So I would say we'd let these other guys go. They're getting pretty soft. They're getting nice and poofy. They are starting to have a little bit of oven spring, even though there's no oven to oven spring with. But that initial expansion of gases is taking place in here. And we could take a look at another one just to be on the safe side. And just gently flip it over. There we go. Get some nice browning. And you can dust off that excess flour there. I'm going to have a rack ready to go so that I can put my finished English muffins on that when they're done. And then I'll do my other ones in batches. I've got 6 more to go over here. And then we're good to go. Okay, so the first batch have come out of the pan. And they are looking pretty sweet now. Brown on both sides, of course. And we're going to put just a little bit more, just a tiny bit more fat in that pan. And you really don't need a lot of fat in there at all. Just a little bit of fat, just to kind of make things go nice. And keep keep your temperature relatively low. I did find that my temperature crept up a little bit, and I ended up getting a little darker than I wanted to get. So I'm going to keep it at just about 3 on here. That should do pretty good. We'll do 4 more. And I would say these are all pretty large too. If you want to make smaller ones, you're more than welcome to. I tend to like these for sandwiches. They are great just to spread some butter or jam on. But as a sandwich kind of a replacement for bread, let's say, it's pretty good. And what I'll do is when I'm done with these, I'll put them all in a bag and put them in the freezer, and then I can use them whenever I want. Defrost them, split them, toast them again, and they're all ready to go. So we're going to let those guys go and get some brownie on them. I'll show you those in a second. So once they brown on one side, it's a lot easier to turn them, and then you turn them over and they're all nice and brown on this side. You can just pick them up like this. Starting to get some serious color on that guy. Could go darker if you want to, but you can just leave these in as long as you need to. In different parts of the pan, it's going to make a different darkness. Let's take a look at that. I would go a little darker on all these guys. Give it some more time. Better to go low and slow than to go too fast. Oh man, homemade English muffins. And they just pull right apart. You get all those nice nooks and crannies. And you don't need a fork, you don't need anything special. It just opens up into that beautiful crust like that. Now I'm going to toast mine. And there it is, toasted. I wish it was that fast in real life. But they have now the kind of craggy look to them, and we can put a little bit of butter on these guys. And let me just pull one of these guys off. You can hear the crunch there. That's what you want to hear. Let's put the butter on this guy too. And you can go darker if you want. Let's take a little taste here. Oh man. That is so good. Homemade English muffins. And it only took about 24 hours. And you say, well, I can go to the grocery store and get them quicker than that. That's true. However, these are 1,000 times better. I think you'll love them. Try them yourself. If you have any questions, please let me know. I want to help you get to your next level of baking. This is Chef Instructor Tom, and happy baking.